Good evening. My name is Marjorie Gans, and I'm a member of the board of the Writers' Room of Boston. I am delighted that you could join us this evening. It's a very hot evening, thank you, for the July reading, in our virtual series Readings from the Room, which we began in March 2021. For anyone new to us, the Writers' Room of Boston is a co-working space in downtown Boston for any and all writers, established and emerging, who want or need a quiet place to write. The room is open 24 hours a day and provides desks and silence and the quiet companionship of other writers. We have been serving writers of the greater Boston area since 1988. Please contact us if you're curious or have any questions, and check out our Instagram and Facebook posts at the Writers of Boston and our newly redesigned website, which we have been working on, still a work in progress, and it's just, some of it is just lovely. There are photos, announcements, and it will take you to recordings of our earlier readings. So even as we speak, it's being refurbished to give you a good sense of the room. And we would be delighted to have new members and we have different levels of membership, including a virtual membership for those who can't easily make it to the room. And if you're interested, please contact our website and our regular email at info@writersroomofboston.org. In 2021, we launched this new reading series as a way to reach out to the writing community during the pandemic and share wonderful writing from both established and emerging writers. Some of the readers call or have called the Writers' Room home, and some are from different parts of the country, thanks to Zoom. Tonight, we have Candelaria Sylvia-Collins, a fiction and essay writer, and Cyrus McQueen, a cultural critic and comedian. Candelaria and Cyrus are mother and son, and we are delighted to have them. As we go along tonight, feel free to use the question and answer feature in the box at the bottom of the screen where you can type in your questions, and we will have time at the end. This series is made possible by grants from the Mass Cultural Council and the Boston Cultural Council, and also we rely on friends. If you enjoy this program, please consider making a contribution using the donate button at the bottom of your screen. Also, we will be recording this reading also, and a replay will be available on the website. Candelaria Sylvia-Collins is an author, coach, and facilitator. She connects community-based groups to the arts and cultural institutions to the BIPOC community. Her children's stories, fiction, essays, and reviews have been published in local and national publications, and she is active on social media and a frequent blogger. Her first published children's book, Stacy Became a Frog One Day, was published in October 2020. Jump, 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 Stacy. The second book in this series was published in December 2021. An active member of Boston's cultural community, she is currently chair of the designators of the George B. Henderson Foundation, program manager for the Fellows Athenaeum Trust Fund for programs at the Roxbury branch of the Boston Public Library, and coordinator of the Creative Entrepreneur Fellowship of the Arts and Business Council of Greater Boston. Candelaria will read first. Candelaria, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who's attending. I'm going to read an excerpt from a middle school chapter book called Baptized in the Mississippi River. I'm going to read from the first chapter at the beginning, and then I'm going to skip to the end of the first chapter as well. I wonder if the river will be dirty. Will the water be cold? Will a big old catfish nibble on my toes? What if I step on an arrow left by the Osage Indians? They used to camp by the river and fish there. I learned about that in school. Well, I'll find out soon enough, because tomorrow is the fourth Sunday in August and I'm going to be baptized in the Mississippi River. The Mississippi is big and wide, and you can see through to the other side. I am so excited and nervous. I've been waiting for this day to come ever since the day in October when I was born again. Baptizing Sunday is the biggest day of the year in my church. It is the beyond all it's for my church, bigger even than Easter and Christmas. After the baptizing, everybody in the family will meet at Aunt Maggie's house and have a great feast. Then we will all head back down to church to the communion. We will dress up in our best new clothes. The women will wear fancy new hats. I wonder who will wear the biggest hat. My mother's hat is pink straw with black and white flowers all over the crown. The men will wear shoes polished to a mirror shine. My father will shine his shoes even though they're new. The little girls will have giant ribbon bows on their ponytails. Because I'm getting baptized, I don't have to wear a ponytail or have barrettes in my hair. My hair will be in a flip with bangs. All the women in our family are wearing pink this year. My mom made me a special pink dress and bought me patent leather shoes with a matching purse and gloves. And guess what else? A hat. For the first time, I'm wearing a hat to church. I feel so grown up. I wonder if my mom will let me use one of her hat pins to keep the hat from falling off my hair. All of us will be styling. I bet we'll be the best looking family at the church tonight. How I got converted. Everybody said I was too young to know that I wanted to be converted, but I wasn't. I know what I feel. I know what I wanted. I wanted to be born again. I kept telling my mother and my grandmother that I wanted to be born again. At first, they didn't really listen to me, but I kept asking every Sunday after church. And finally, my mom told me to go on up to the mourner's bench on the next Sunday if I felt moved to do so. And so I did. I sat on the mourner's bench at the front of my church, Ascending Star Missionary Baptist Church, with other people who also wanted to be born again. Don't laugh, but I used to call it the moaning bench because that's what it sounded like people were saying. The Reverend came over and touched my shoulder. He told me to repeat, "Lord, have mercy," after him. I repeated, "Lord, have mercy, over and over until I felt the Holy Spirit come into me. My heart and mind filled with love. I loved everybody. I felt like I was connected to everyone and everyone was connected to me. I felt love wash over me. I saw God's face. I really did. It was my face and my mama's face, everybody in my family's face, and everybody in the church's face. It was the face of everyone in the world at the same time. It's too much to explain. I know what I know. I know what I saw. I was changed, but not rearranged. I was born again, and now I'm going to be baptized. I was embraced by the Reverend and everybody in the church. "You're brand new," the Reverend explained. He turned to the church. "She's brand new, converted, and a little child will lead them," he said. The church said, "Amen." I felt brand new. Being baptized will make me a full member of the church. I'll be able to sing in the junior choir, speak in the Sunday evening program if somebody puts my name in, and lead the church in prayer. I wonder if Sister Bibby will snatch off her hat and wig like she did last year at the river. That was funny. If Brother Ellis gets happy, will he take off running like he does in church? What if he runs into the river? The questions keep jumping in my brain. They won't let me sleep. I get up and take a bath and get dressed before my mother comes to wake me. I've been to the baptizing before, but this time is different because I won't just be watching. I'll be getting into the water too. I don't think my mother slept at all. She was finishing the new outfits for us to wear to church later and making her potato salad, sweet potato pies, and lemon cake to take to my aunt's house for dinner. "Are you nervous, Tina?" Mama asked when I come to the kitchen. "A little bit," I say. "Don't worry, everything will be fine," she says, and gives me my morning mama hug. "Go wake your sister," she says, while I finish breakfast. That girl could sleep through a tornado. Even though Mama has made my favorite breakfast, hot rice with butter and sugar, bacon, scrambled eggs with cheese, and bread toasted in the oven and slathered with butter and apple butter, I don't eat that much. My stomach is fluttering like a bunch of butterflies are trapped inside of it. We have to be at the church by 8 o'clock. Since we live way over on the edge of St. Louis near Wellston, we have to leave our house by 7 o'clock sharp to get there on time, my dad says. We load up in Big Blue, our station wagon, and head down on Kings Highway. It seems like we'll never get there. "Will I get to stand by Phyllis?" I asked my mother. She's my favorite cousin. "No, she's taller than you," my mother answers. "You will line up by height. What about my hair? I'm worried because even though I'll have a shower cap on under the scarf that will cover my hair, it won't keep my hair from getting wet. I know because I practiced dunking my head in the water with the shower cap on last Friday night when I took my bath. I always get my hair fixed on Saturday, so it was okay to try to get it wet. I'll wash it and press it when we get home, my mother says. Don't worry, it'll look pretty for communion service. Don't swallow any of the water, Tina, my little sister Lena says. You might get sick from all the icky germs and stuff in it. I wonder if there'll be fish egg and amoeba in the water like we learned in school. I wonder what will happen if I swallow all that cruddy stuff. She won't get sick, my mother says. She'll be in and out of the water before she knows it. Besides, the Lord will protect her and all of the other folks getting baptized because this is the Lord's business and this is God's water. Finally, we get to church. There's a long line of cars waiting to go into the parking lot. My father lets me and my mother out in front and then gets in the line of cars. I go downstairs with my mother to the basement where all the converts were told to meet. Lena has to stay upstairs with my father. Hallelujah, Mother Pillow greets us. Hallelujah, we say back. There must be 100 of us getting baptized. I go with the other girls and women into a room where the mothers of the church are waiting for us. As they put white robes over our clothes, they hum softly, their voices harmonious and comforting. The boys and men go to the men's room to get dressed. A white scarf is tied over the 2 shower caps I have over my hair with a big rubber band and a bunch of bobby pins holding them in place. We all wear white socks. And so now I'm going to skip to the last part of the first chapter. Sister Lanier's singing pulls me out of my thoughts. Her singing means that the last person has been baptized on this 4th Sunday in August. I know I got religion, she sings. We sing back, oh, certainly. No, I got religion, oh, certainly. No, I got religion, certainly, Lord. Certainly, 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 Lord. Mama, Aunt Reen, Aunt Dot, Aunt Fanny, Aunt Dot, Uncle Frank, Miss Mary, who lives up the street, Ruth, Marnette, all of my cousins, everybody is singing. I know I got religion, certainly, Lord. I know I'm not ashamed, certainly, Lord. You see, the Holy Ghost is my witness, certainly, Lord. I join everybody in singing this song that I know inside and out. It's one of my favorites. Without even thinking about it, we all step in time from side to side as the song repeats and repeats until we are all breathing this message. We are now at my favorite part of this song. Sister Lanier says, step in the water, and we say, certainly, Lord. Sister Lanier stepped in the water, certainly, Lord. Sister Lanier sings louder and louder through her tears. She throws her head back and starts clapping, and we all join her. Sister Lanier stepped in the water. It rise to my knees. Certainly, Lord. I said, Lord, mercy, please. Certainly, Lord. Sister Lanier sings, stepped in the water, it rise to my waist. Us said, certainly, Lord. Sister Lanier says, I said, Lord, more grace. On the next verse, I join her and sing in my loudest voice. Me, I've been baptized. Oh, everyone, oh, certainly. Me, you know, I've been baptized. Everyone, oh, certainly. I've been baptized. Certainly, Lord. Certainly, 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 Lord. I have stood on the banks of the river. I have stepped into the mighty Mississippi and been covered by its waters. I am now one with my church family. I have been baptized in the Mississippi River. My mother and grandmother hug and we rush to the car where my father is waiting. My stomach growls as we head home. I can't wait for the food we're going to have at my Aunt Maggie's house and to show off my new pink dress this evening. And that's what I'll read today. Thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. And we will come back to you. But first, we're going to move to Cyrus. And Cyrus, oops, let me get my script here, sorry. So I'm not staring down. Cyrus McQueen is a comedian, a cultural critic, and a writer whose mirthful and insightful analysis of race and politics has resonated throughout the Twitterverse. His tweets pertaining to politics, pop culture, and race have routinely landed in Variety, Time Magazine, HuffPost, and BuzzFeed. A top 20 finalist on season 9 of NBC's Last Comic Standing, McQueen has also been featured in the A24 film Obvious Child and on AXS TV's Gotham Comedy Live. Tweeting truth to power, chronicling our caustic politics, crazed times, and the great black and white divide is McQueen's first book. So Cyrus, it's yours to read now.
Well, thank you so much, Marjorie, for such a wonderful introduction, and thank you everybody for participating and attending the event. This book, I write about obviously what I did using social media to disseminate truth, but also to find the humor in what was going on in our political climate. And this chapter called Funny Business, and what I'm about to read is a brief excerpt of a show I did when I decided to bring some of the material I've been writing about our politics and Trump back to a performing stage in front of a raucous and rough crowd. So, the opportunity to once again take the temperature of the country soon presented itself. For me, a living, breathing patient in the form of a large live audience is always preferable to any digital correspondence. I relish the chance to study in real time how humor affects the human body, to observe the blood rushing to their faces, the lines forming from their cheeks to their chins, their mouths agape as they are fed one line after another. There is nothing better than beholding a satiated crowd, stuffed and fully satisfied from the comedic fodder being served up. These delicious visions nourished me all the way down the shore, my hunger to jump back on stage about to be rewarded with a feast in a familiar location. Yes, I was returning to South Jersey, the scene of the crime, the same venue where a year earlier I had resurrected the Boston Massacre. For a middle-aged and mostly older audience, the guffawing geriatrics, unprepared for the physical demands I placed on them. Yet as I counted down the exits on the turnpike, nervousness set in. Would it be the same? Would this crowd prove as welcoming as the last? After yet another year of the Trump presidency, would my observations remain salient and satisfying to an older audience? I had pieced together several new jokes, repurposed from my Twitter set, embellished and fleshed out for maximum effectiveness on stage. Yet though they had succeeded online, likes and retweets corroborating their viability, disseminating it all in real time was not unlike walking a tightrope. Every step had to be well-timed and perfect, or I would face a ghastly demise. No comedian enjoys dying on stage, and despite the science and repetition we apply to it, it remains an art form and thus unpredictable. Kill or be killed, the only binary option. I furtively retraced my steps, arriving to yet another sold-out house. Retirees sipping rosé, the men clad in a rich palette of turquoise and peach button-downs. As I paced the hallway behind the back tables, sensations from the year before began to return to me. The audience began emanating approval to the MC in the form of raucous cheering and whistles. As the MC laid the groundwork, I recalibrated and shifted things around. The feature act then went on, presenting gems not too dissimilar to ones embedded in my leather-bound joke book. I held mine up to his in the moment, comparing and contrasting before determining that my precious stones bore enough of a resemblance to the patrons that they would likely buy mine too. That would be my way in now. General jokes about the weather, not unlike those about sports, would, I hope, provide me with a perfect springboard into another warm reception. The knot in my throat threatened to constrict my breathing as the host announced me. But the muscle memory of vaulting on stage soon took over. My body began moving without my consent. The previous comic, having addressed the inclement weather, gave me an anchor for my opening joke, a yarn about white weathermen vilifying black ice while never mentioning the destruction caused by regular ice. Almost immediately, I heard the boom, that all too familiar, oh so welcome sound after your words detonate an explosion of rolling laughter. I was back. Opening on race, with my comedic examination of societal contradictions eliciting that big of a reaction, it reduced any lingering fear that was keeping me from being fully present. I proceeded with the pyrotechnics, transitioning seamlessly into growing up Black, being Black in an interracial marriage, even the silly way that racism propagates itself through such technological advancements as autocorrect. Every punchline popped, the clapping hands convincing me that not only did my truth go off, but that it was landing. The distant rumble reflecting the slight delay as my gospel rippled throughout the venue. The sweat began trickling down my forehead, a drop landing on the screen of my phone when I checked to see how far I had ventured into my set. Already at the 42-minute mark, and despite the discharge, I had yet to launch into any of my Trump material. With less than 20 minutes to bring this fight in for a landing, I addressed the orange elephant in the room. So I gotta ask, how do we feel about Trump? The response was nearly unanimous. Boos began to emanate from the bombed out crowd. This corroboration, all I needed to begin lighting the fuse for the finale. Can you believe Trump says he isn't racist? Says he's the least racist person you'll ever meet? The disdain began to slowly crest, the hisses preceding the very sound that would immediately follow ignition. I don't know, if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it's named Donald, boom, I could feel the cracking of thunder reverberating throughout the crowd of flushed faces. I remember the heads of those around the stage darting from side to side as each person found comfort and confirmation in the laughter of the person beside them. This stunning visual added a compelling layer, rolling laughter from the crowd leading to this rewarding display, the sea of happy faces resembling rollicking waves. I did not hear the different kind of boos at first, the ones that all comedians dread. You would have been hard pressed to hear any signs of disapproval in that extravaganza, but perhaps my inner ear was attuned to the possibility, even anticipating such a response. That all too real possibility that had preceded my journey and lingered just over my shoulder throughout the evening was indeed transpiring. My fears would be confirmed when the applause died down just enough for me to make out a faint "fuck you" from near the back of the room. Almost immediately, the sea parted and I could make out shadows of figures rising. Sounds of commotions began to supplant the more favorable noises that had been drowning it all out. I observed the looks of satisfaction suddenly morph into looks of concern as every head was soon rubbernecking towards the back of the room. I had already begun my next joke, and so as not to telegraph my own disconcertment, I pushed on through. But to my consternation, that joke failed to land. My mind immediately began racing as I feverishly sought a way out of this turbulence. I started thinking of retorts, loading the chamber with a few deadly compacts just in case I had to start firing back at the crowd. But alas, no one was paying any attention to me at all. All eyes were now trained on this table of 6 disgruntled Trump supporters from Cape May. As they continued their hijack, I can now definitively make out the "fuck yous." The manager began to hustle them from the venue, but under the burning stage lights, what was likely a matter of seconds felt to me like an eternity. Before I could recover, let alone retaliate, magic occurred. The audience, my charges, stood up to protect me. They heckled my hecklers, steadily at first, then in a precipitous downpour, drowning out the disruption. Folks on either side of the stage rose to their feet. Their own booing rained down on those being ejected. A table at 2 o'clock, followed by a table at 9 o'clock, rose. The octogenarian occupants created an omnidirectional phalanx. The fervor by which they slowly but surely rose to the challenge moved me to my core. I was rendered speechless. I remember once reading about a school of dolphins that had encircled a swimmer to protect them from an approaching great white shark. This felt like that. Before long, every table was shielding me from the attack. These older men and women, a rampart of reassurance, absorbing the vituperation. To my eternal surprise, nearly everyone around me began clapping, encouraging me to keep going. The disdain was redirected at my saboteurs. The ringing endorsement directed towards me. It heightened the dissonance in this surreal scene. The group of 6 finally exited, and I will never forget the exclamation point that one woman provided as she pointed towards their empty table and yelled, "They couldn't handle the truth." And then, as if she could not warm my jaded heart anymore, this vivacious woman with the animal print blouse implored me, keep going, hon. Now, having taken the stages both minuscule and massive, from bar basements to a Hollywood soundstage, from shows with over 1,000 people to those with only one, this stands as my most rewarding stand-up experience ever. And that's the end of that morsel in that chapter of Funny Business and Tweeting Truth to Power. Thank you again, Marguerite, and everyone.
Oh, that was wonderful. I'm trying to get my video back. Sorry. There we go. Thank you. That was terrific.
Thank you.
So we have some time for questions, and I have a question for each of you. And if anybody in the audience has one, please put it into, oh, there's a, no. Okay. So I'm going to go back to Candelaria. I loved what you wrote, and I can, obviously, it's so different from my experience. And what struck me is the way the entire community was involved in her conversion and the baptism. And there were a lot of wonderful details. And what I wanted was this sort of sense of the larger view, like, what does it mean to the community when someone, in this case, a young, how old is the girl?
8 years old.
8 years old. Maybe especially when someone young converts. What does it mean that everybody comes together like that?
Well, it means that you're part of a larger something, that you now belong to this church community that you have called. You couldn't be baptized in the church I grew up in without choosing to be converted or born again. So when a young child comes, that means another generation is coming, and in our family. So this story is true but not accurate, accurate but not true. So it's a composite of years and years of my experience and my sister and cousins and stuff going to church. So it just means that you've continued the community, that you've joined. There was a real campaign among my grandmother to get some of the cousins and one aunt who was very, very late to join. There was definitely family pressure that, you want to be part of rising this church. And so you've got to be converted. But for me, the character, I was much younger actually, but I wanted it because everybody was doing it. And I wanted to be in the choir too. That was a part of my motivation as a young child.
So it sounds like on the other side, it also means that you know that you're part of that community.
Yes.
And you have them, you are with
Yes.
them and they are with you. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, and then Cyrus, I have a different kind of question for you because it was a different kind of reading. In terms of performing, I think almost any artist, at least at some point, starts to think about who the audience is, whether you're presenting even a poem or a photograph or anything. So I sort of have two questions. When you're doing comedy, how much do you think about the audience that you'll be performing in front of and what you're going to bring? Do you tailor it? Do you just bring what you're going to bring?
You'll, as a performer, you'll have your defiant moments where you're like, I've been working on this and I want to do it. I don't care if they like it or not. Moments of hubris, company, stand-up comedy, they go, tooth and nail. But for a good comedian, in my opinion, will always observe what's going on in the room. As I write in earlier, this is like I say I'm returning to the scene of the crime because in a beginning chapter, that's when I first performed at this venue in South New Jersey, and it was right after the election. And that show went swimmingly as well, but the MC had sort of warned me from staying away from the Trump material and political stuff because it was a mostly older white audience. And again, the hubris of a young comedian, I sort of said, well, I don't care, I'm gonna do it anyway. And so, yes, there's certain rooms, but then comedian, like I said, it's an art and it's not a science. There's been times where I've been performing in front of a younger audience, a supposedly hipper audience, and jokes have failed to land, whereas I perform in front of an older, middle-aged crowd and they are bringing the laughter. So you can't necessarily tailor an outcome based on based on the audience. But yeah, typically, certain rooms will, to start with certain jokes maybe you want to rearrange just to sort of maximize the effectiveness of your performance.
And then you kind of feel your way as you go along.
Yeah, basically, if they're picking up what you're putting down, then you can sort of say, okay, then let me go for this one thing that I was a little reluctant to talk about because they seem to be with it. A good laughter. If you can see, as I sort of hinted at, if the MC and the feature acts have sort of, gotten that corroboration that there's like a live audience, they're actually there, then you can pretty much guarantee that, okay, I've got stuff that has worked so many times, 98% of the time, that it's probably going to work here as well. That's how you typically try to gauge it. But again, a malaise can ripple through any sort of crowd, despite age and despite demographics. So it remains an art form and not a science.
Yeah, it just seems like an art form without a net. So my hat is off to you. So there's one more question for Cyrus, and which is, how does stand-up feed you as different from writing prose?
Well, it's interesting because you get an immediate gratification. The thing that's so addictive about stand-up is you get immediate, it's the only art form where you get immediate, visceral, palpable corroboration of how well your art is being received. Most painters, unless you're hanging around a museum, you're not going to see how it's affecting people. Musicians, you record a song, unless you're at a concert, you don't get that palpable sort of, reward. So for me, on an ego level, it's fun because you get to know that what you've worked on is being received well. But writing, in my opinion, is far more satiating, far more fulfilling. And it's something that I've kind of put off for a very, very long time. And finally, words started coming to me, and I found myself writing before I even was conscious of what I was doing. I just found words coming to me. I'm like, oh, I guess this is the preamble to a book. But writing to me is the most fulfilling, amazing, profound experience that an artist can be engaged in personally. It pulls you apart and puts you back together in ways that stand-up doesn't, because a lot of your reactions in the stand-up, you have to follow a formula of set up, punch, set up, punch, set up, punch. Writing, you kind of just explore the human condition, and as I say, it's almost like burying yourself alive and having to climb your way out. It's a far more tough and ultimately rewarding endeavor to me.
Thanks. And I will remember that image the next time I start to do my writing again. And Candelaria, I think I'm going to try and phrase this question, and somebody can correct me if I'm getting it wrong, which is how as you read from your book or other people read it, how others might think about being born again when it has kind of become identified with the political right. Is that something that you've run into at all?
There was another question in chat for Cy as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to make
I want to reclaim my religion. I grew up in a loving, accepting Christian Southern Baptist church with a ton of community. Our church owned a grocery store. Our church owned apartments. There were people that I knew growing up were different. And when I got older, gay, I figured out they were gay, who were very much a part of our church. We didn't use the terms in those days, but they were very much a part of our church. We haven't even had a couple of white members. And I think it's important. It's just like I have to claim being a United States citizen. The flag belongs to me as much as it belongs to anyone else, and religion belongs to me. And the story gets like, the first part of it is really, and then you get into the family dinner and all the jokes and stuff, and then going back and the pageantry of communion in the evening. But I think we have to claim it. If you don't claim it, then the people who are the most loud and the most ignorant get to put a claim on something that belongs to lots and lots of different people in lots and lots of gradations. The thing that I am the most is a human being on the planet Earth. And I really did have that image that I think of God as an infinite mirror, and that everybody's face was reflected. So I do really remember having that kind of experience. Thanks.
Thank you. That's actually really helpful to me to hear. And we'll go with the last question for Cyrus. whether you've had the experience that some nights things work, and then sometimes with the same material, it doesn't. And you spoke that a little bit, but if you could say more about that, that would be great.
Yeah, it's the confounding nature of art, and certainly in stand-up, because as I said before, you get an immediate sort of indication of whether what you worked on is working. And it's no comedian on this earth will have 100% of the time their jokes land. Even when you're workshopping, when you get to a certain level, even when you're performing in front of arenas, if you're performing in front of, a bar in Manhattan, big shows or small shows, like there's no way that the material is always going to land each time. I remember hearing Chris Rock once say that when he workshopped one of his most successful bits, he was trying it out for months and months and months, and he was getting like tepid response, and then he got an enormous, great response, and then it went back to tepid response. And so as a comedian, you can sort of like get in your own head. It's like, what did I do differently that night? A lot of comedians are, anal when it comes to taping themselves and going almost verbatim every single time they do a joke, be it set up to punchline or whether they add an act out, but they like to do it exactly the same way each time so that they can properly gauge, was it something that I did that messed up the punchline? Was it just the audience or not? So you're constantly in that back and forth, you versus the audience. And it's why it's an art form, because you can, and I have, and anybody worth their salt as a stand-up has performed well-rehearsed, well-written, well-timed out material, and it just, for whatever reason, it doesn't land. And sometimes, the audience is it's an amoeba, it's its own living entity, and sometimes, it just doesn't, as part of stand-up, it doesn't work without the audience. So there's me and there's the audience. You call the volley almost like a tennis game, but like we both have to be working with each other ultimately for a show to take off. And but that's what makes it interesting.
Thank you. It makes it sound like life in some ways.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just keep moving. Okay, so it's about 25 of, so we will wrap it up there. And I want to thank you, Candelaria and Cyrus, for these wonderful readings and the conversation afterwards. And special thanks to our board president, Mark Eichen, for stepping in to do the technology. We will take a break in the month of August, since people tend to flee, but we will be back in September. So if you join us for our reading the third Wednesday in September, which is September 21st, and we will send announcements out on the website and announcements to the room about who those readers will be. And then we'll read through September, October, November, and again, take December off. So we hope you will have a wonderful rest of the summer and join us in September. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night.